Baseball Tonight, the podcast.
This is the Baseball Tonight podcast for Tuesday, February 28, 2017. I'm Buster Olney, and our esteemed producer is Josh Macri. And Josh, today, a big day today on the podcast because college basketball tonight, Vanderbilt, University of Kentucky, we're on the bubble. We could push it over the edge, Josh.
Oh, man, Buster, I have a countdown going in my head of when that game starts. I can't wait to get out of here today so I can go get home, crack myself a cold beverage, and watch some Commodore hoops.
Nice. I'm wearing the old black and gold, and I'm the only one, probably. No, I'm just kidding. All right, well, today in the podcast, seriously, it'll be about baseball. We got Jason Stark talking about politics in clubhouses. We'll be talking with John Capolela, the general manager of the Atlanta Braves, about Atlanta's new ballpark and whether it's going to favor hitters or pitchers. We'll go rapid fire with Dallas Keuchel, and he talks about the impact of new teammate Brian McCann. And today, I begin the defense of my uniform and logo title. We have Todd Radom, the president of our uniform and logo quiz. But first, some news and notes. Michael Brantley of the Cleveland Indians took live batting practice for the first time. Progress for a player who struggled to come back from a shoulder injury last year. He spoke with MLB.com, as did general manager Mike Chernoff.
I mean, as soon as you get back on the field, it's a different atmosphere. You're going to have to, get some reps under your belt. I just look forward to being back out there pain-free with my teammates. They won a BP. I'm happy with it, and we'll go from there.
It's great to see it. I mean, it's obviously been a while since we've seen him out here. He looks good. He continues to feel really good, so it's fun to see it. His volume has really picked up in the batting cage, and then obviously he got out here today, so everything's been really positive.
As Henry Schulman wrote in today's San Francisco Chronicle, Andrew Baggerly in the San Jose Mercury News, Johnny Cueto still has not joined the Giants. He's been tending to his ailing father. The Giants say that he's working on bringing his dad to Arizona, but that is an increasing concern for the team that Cueto has not joined them. Rangers outfielder Josh Hamilton had another surgery on his left knee. He's now had 11 knee surgeries in his career, and there's some questions about whether or not this will effectively end his career. The family of Jose Fernandez wants his daughter to get the estate. His daughter was born last week, Penelope, and the family will seek to name his newborn daughter as the sole beneficiary to his estate. Well, Josh, a tough day for David Wright. The Mets announced this morning that his chances of being ready for opening day have taken a hit. Mark Carrig was among those who talked about this on Twitter this morning. He's got shoulder soreness, and he has halted his throwing program. Look, he to me, was a long shot at the beginning of spring training to contribute anything during this season. He's got regressive conditions in his body, and if you can't throw, you're not going to be able to play, and you do wonder if at some point David's going to come face-to-face with the question of, look, does he just go on the disabled list the way Prince Fielder did and go on the 60-day DL and effectively have his career over while he collects the paychecks that he's getting from the Mets over the next 4 years?
Yeah, Buster, that's certainly going to be an interesting decision for him and for the Mets organization, and as unfortunate as this all is sounding, as you know, I mean, this doesn't really come as that much of a surprise. We've seen this coming with David Wright over the last couple seasons where his body is just breaking down. And, like I said, it's too bad because he's been a great player, one of the best players of the generation, really. But to see it end like this, if this is, in fact, the end, it's too bad. But it's not completely surprising, unfortunately.
No, and the Mets, I think, did a good job in building up depth. They went into spring training with both Jose Reyes, Wilmer Flores. They've got some other minor leagues backed up as well. Essentially, they went into spring saying, we're not going to count on anything from David Wright, and it looks at this moment like they will not be getting anything from him in the foreseeable future. Tim Tebow took batting practice on Monday, and afterward he talked with Sal Paolantonio.
Being able to recognize what's coming, what they're going to throw, anticipating it, and then reacting to the knowledge that you already have built up on what they're expecting to throw based on situations. And so I think for me, the more at-bats that I see, the more comfortable I get with that. And continuing to see pitches, see it out of the hand as fast as possible, and that gives you more reaction time. And the more time you can buy, the better you're going to be.
He reportedly hit a bunch of homers in batting practice.
What are we talking about? Practice?
Yep, we're talking about practice. I think about 5,000 other players also hit 9 to 10 homers in batting practice yesterday. Josh?
Yeah, we're looking to confirm that, but it seems that it's a pretty exclusive club of guys who hit a lot of home runs in batting practice. But, like I said, we're working on it. We're getting the home run trackers out there and, seeing what we can do. We are a news organization, Buster, so, every time Tim Tebow hits a home run, we do have to send out alerts so the fans know that.
Oh, boy. With that, let's get to it.
He's the $1 Million Man from $1 Million Arm. Action! It's Jason Stark on Baseball Tonight.
Jason Stark covers baseball for ESPN. He is on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line. And Jason, how many years you been covering baseball?
30-something.
30-something years. At some point, you'll be honored at the Hall of Fame, I'm sure. And you've written a lot about pitchers, a lot about catchers, a lot about hitters. But I think today, this will be the first story that you've done on baseball politics. A fascinating piece that you put together. It's on ESPN.com today. I would encourage everybody to read it. It's about how politics, really, if you're to summarize it, it doesn't play as big of a role in baseball as it does in other sports, and you dug into the question of why that is.
Yeah, exactly. And, Buster, I just first off, I tried my best to look at this from no particular political point of view. I talked to players and executives from all different perspectives, people who I know are conservatives.
Wait. I got to find some. Did you talk to left-handers and right-handers? That's what I need to know.
I did.
Okay, good.
The left and the right are represented in all sorts of ways, Buster. I also tried to make sure I talked to players from outside the country, a guy like Roberto Osuna from Mexico, who could lend a little of that perspective. And let me just say, this is an uncomfortable topic. Many of the people that I spoke with were very uncomfortable in the conversations. And so I really tried to respect that, both in terms of those conversations I had and the way the piece was written. It's just interesting because, a week or so ago, we had the All-Star game in the NBA. It feels like everyone in that league is weighing in on politics, the stars, the coaches, the owner. In baseball, we've seen Dexter Fowler speak a little bit about a personal situation, Sean Doolittle speaking from a personal perspective. Other than that, I think we've heard pretty much zero political talk this spring. I'm sure you've noticed the same thing.
Oh, yeah, and it doesn't surprise me. I have my own theory as to why this is, but before we get to that, I want to ask you, so what were some of the conversations that you had in reporting this piece? Well,
I talked to a lot of people, from Rod Manfred and Tony Clark to GMs, officials who would not be quoted on the record, thoughtful players who are willing to talk to me about the dynamics that they see. Chris Archer was great. Jimmy Rollins, great. Brad Ziegler, tremendous. I mentioned Roberto Osuna. I even talked to Chuck Todd, the host of Meet the Press, because he's a big baseball fan, and I heard him speaking about this on Meet the Press one day, and he just to provide some big picture outside perspective. And Buster, I really tried to analyze why we haven't heard a lot of political talk, and I decided there are two big reasons. One is simple. I know of several teams that have either strongly suggested players stay away from these topics or basically warned them. This subject is radioactive. I had an official of one team. Didn't want to talk to me on the record, but he told me he thinks it's his job to make sure everyone in his franchise avoids controversy right now. He said that he in that day one clubhouse meeting that every team has, he actually told players he's never seen the country more divided, so they should know if they express an opinion, any opinion on this, that 50% of their fans would instantly go from cheering them to hating them. If I were sitting there, I know that would get my attention. But I think the second thing that's going on here is that the culture of baseball is just different from the other sports, and especially from the NBA. I don't think anyone expressed that better than Jimmy Rollins. He talked about how the stars in the NBA are largely African American, and how they have this immense stature and star power. So, I mean, these were his words. He said the black culture depends on the NBA to set a social and political tone. But in baseball's just different. In basketball, when LeBron speaks, he knows Steph is speaking. He knows Carmelo is speaking out. He knows coaches are speaking out. In baseball, I mean, almost no one is taking a stand just to take one. We've mentioned Dexter Fowler, spoke about his concerns about his wife's family, and look what that stirred up. Sean Doolittle spoke from the personal perspective of someone who had invited Syrian immigrants for Thanksgiving. But for players to take a stand just because they have a strong personal political conviction, again, Jimmy Rollins really interesting on this, said it would take a brave person, Buster, a brave person. And why? Because no one wants to go it alone. And, I mean, again, we've seen the reaction to Dexter Fowler and Sean Doolittle. We've seen, players know the kind of reaction they get if they even make an error, right, or give up a home run, or blow a save, whatever. I just think players are doing their best to avoid that right now. It's a big force.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with the nature of baseball. That the players in baseball, because there's so much failure, have essentially learned that to survive in baseball, you have to maintain an even keel, right? You have to put a bad moment behind you. You can't focus on bad things. You just have to move on. They don't want to build up a moment. They don't want to overreact to a given moment. It's so different than in the NFL, where it feels like there's a 7-day ramp up to this, to opening kickoff and emotion and hitting the pile and everyone going full speed. And in baseball, it's, okay, I had an at-bat and I'm putting that behind me and I'm moving forward. I actually wrote something about this. Didn't finish it last year during all the national anthem controversy, with Colin Kaepernick. And I started to write this piece about how in baseball the national anthem is just handled so differently. Like a lot of players, some teams like the Yankees, the Cardinals will mandate that their players come out, stand in a line, put their hats over their hearts for the national anthem. But a lot of players, you see this, they literally will run off the field because they don't want to stand in place for the national anthem. Because guess what? There's one every day. It goes on every day. It's not that big of a deal. And I think that sort of the way that players think in baseball is so different than in other sports because they don't want to play up things. They want to tamp everything down. I remember once having a conversation with Trevor Hoffman, who, of course, went on to become one of the great closers of all time, and I asked him, why was it that you failed as a position player in the minor leagues? And he looked at me and he said, you know what? I couldn't handle the 0 for 4s. And that's what it's all about for a lot of these players, dealing with failure. And so I think they reflexively don't like to call attention on themselves.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And the everyday nature of the sport is a big part of it, too. I really came to the conclusion that this tells us a lot about how clubhouses function, right? In clubhouses, in baseball, there's a gravitational force that pulls teams together, or at least most teams. In the world outside the ballpark these days, it feels like all the forces are pulling us apart. So in that world, inside that clubhouse, when issues arise, any kind of issues that begin to pull teams apart, they're shut down by the leaders in the room. And the players had some really interesting observations about that. I thought Brad Ziegler had a really insightful look at that. He said that, in some ways it's a microcosm of the world we live in. The only way that good teams function and the only way teams win is to bond and to do everything they can to keep everyone pointing in the same direction. Whereas what makes America the dysfunctional country it's becoming, it feels like, is that it just seems like no one in government is working together, and it's so hard to get things done when that's the dynamic as opposed to the baseball clubhouse dynamic.
Specifically, what did you hear from Commissioner Rob Manfred and Tony Clark, who's the head of the Players Association, about this issue?
Well, Tony Clark largely weighed in on just that aspect of how baseball players think and how clubhouses function, and how just behind closed doors, when we're not in there, when the world isn't watching, players have a ton of personal disagreements and issues that arise, and they deal with them. But when the doors open, they present a much different face, because that's what they have to do every day, living together, being together for 7-8 months. Rob Manfred, I talked to on a whole different perspective, and one of the things I asked him was what advice he would give to players who wanted to speak out, and he said it's always been his position and the sports position, and always would be as long as he was commissioner, that players have the freedom to say whatever they feel it's important for them to say, and that baseball would never tell them they can't do that. But obviously the forces are leading these players to think differently. And so when we explored that a little bit, he mentioned it's the sport of Jackie Robinson, and every day baseball sends a message to the country because it has such a diverse mix of players and people, and the fact that they're out there playing together, working together, is a message unto itself. But I tried to explore with him whether baseball's role should be to try to make a statement, because it is the sport of Jackie Robinson, and try to heal in some way, or whether it should try to unite in a different way. And his feeling is that baseball makes a statement every day because of who's playing it, and that the best service it can provide to the country is to provide this great unifying form of entertainment every single day. And if I were the commissioner, I think I would probably think exactly the same way.
Yep.
But it's really an interesting question. Chuck Todd, because that's kind of his job, he sort of raised this and asked whether baseball, because it has this incredible diverse mix, does it have a unique platform that it could use to help unite the country? Try to explore that a little bit, Buster. Ask yourself this: how long has it been since baseball was really a powerful, healing, social force in America? Brought up 9/11. I think 9/11 was different. Baseball did help America heal, but as Chuck Todd said in the piece, and I agree, it helped America heal by providing a daily normalcy that we all desperately needed. And the country wasn't really divided after 9/11. It was united. You really would have to go back half a century, right? From the debut of Jackie Robinson to the days in the late 60s when baseball really did lead the way in civil rights. But those were really different times. I think we need baseball now because we need forces that bring us together. It would be great if baseball could help heal America. But I actually had an official of one team yell at me for even asking about this. He told me I was biting off more than I could chew. Those were his words, and he said to me,
"Wow,
have you found anyone or anything that can solve these problems?" It's a good point. These are troubling times.
Yeah, you and I, for years, and I can't wait to hear off the record who that person was when I talk to you later. I know you can't say it here.
It's not going to come out in the podcast.
Yeah, that's true. But you and I, for years, have heard about players, and Jason Varitek being a classic example, and they talk about players who lead by example versus players who lead by things they say. I think that's been baseball's role in society. One of the great historians, U.S. historians, was David Halberstam, who I got to know, and he wrote a great book about called October of '64, and it was about the Cardinals versus the Yankees in the World Series. But a lot of it, like a lot of David's work on sports, was about the shift in the United States and how you had the National League, which had embraced the idea of signing African American players, versus the American League teams. The Yankees were the best of the American League teams not doing that. And that World Series being an indicator of what was to come, in society, reflecting society. And I think that's always going to be baseball's role. I just don't, like I said, it's just not the same. The players don't think the same. I mean, you and I both know that, in baseball, in the NFL, the wide receivers are the most outspoken players most of the time. They get the most attention. The closest thing that baseball has to that is starting pitchers. There's certain personalities who are like that. And, boy, the ones who really stand out, you get players on the team who look at them sideways and go, you know what, that guy's calling way too much attention to himself. And that's just the culture of baseball. There's no doubt about it. I'm curious.
It totally is.
All right, so in reporting this, obviously you're talking to some of the most powerful people in the sport. What have you learned about the pace of play, pace of action initiative that gained so much attention last week when Rob Manfred basically said, look, we need to move forward?
Yeah, I heard a lot of talk, Buster, about the commissioner's appearance on the podcast last week. And I was struck, a lot of people were struck by the fact that his tone was so different from the public statements that he'd made earlier in the week when he was basically heaping all the blame on the players. I felt like the fact that he called Tony Clark the next morning to explain what he said and where he was coming from was very important. Look, this isn't going anywhere this year, so they now have a year to have a much different, much more productive conversation. One of the issues here, the proposals didn't reach the players until late January. Spring training was a couple of weeks away. When you think about everything the players had to work through from all their different perspectives, I just don't see how there was time to do anything dramatic before spring training. So as I said last week, I think time definitely got in the way. But there's more going on here. The players view this so differently than the other side. And I think that people in baseball who have really thought this through from a much bigger, more global perspective than players have, need to hit the players with a lot more information to explain this stuff. Why do you want to change the strike zone? Here's what it would do. Why do you want to limit mound visits? This is why it's so important. And I also think the players have questions that maybe Major League Baseball hasn't fully answered. What is the real objective here? What are fans
the end game? That's why I asked Rob. I don't know if you heard the interview I did with Rob, but I asked him a question at one point. What's your end game? I think that's important to get to the players in their minds. Look, this is where we're trying to get to. You guys help us find solutions.
Right, and I think the players are going to do that at some point. But Buster, they're just looking at this from a completely different level. As I said last week, they're looking at it through their own individual prisms as players. And, they need to take a much bigger picture view of it, too. But I think baseball should tell them, all right, here's what fans are telling us they need to see to really help the game. Here are what the fans we've lost are telling us. There is a fundamental conflict here. Do they need to cut time off the games, get them over with a lot earlier, and that'll turn people into baseball fans who have started to drift away? Or do they need more action, which will probably make the games longer? Can you do both? How can you do both? I just don't think the players have a different view of what they think the sport needs to do. The owners have a completely, I don't want to say opposite view, but a completely different perspective as a business, not just as a sport. And they need to figure out where they're trying to go, what they're trying to achieve before they can really have that productive conversation that you and I have been looking for them to have.
Yeah, and I think a couple of things should happen. One, I think there needs to be leadership on the player side, and I don't know where that's going to come from, but that needs to be explained to the players. Look, we're going to be moving in a certain direction, and we all need to be involved in this thing. And here's my analogy. Here's what I would do if I was working in Major League Baseball side. You've seen Apollo 13, right, Jason?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, Jason, Josh, you've seen Apollo 13, right?
I have.
I would treat it. You know that scene where they find out that they have to clean the oxygen in the capsule, right? They're running out of oxygen. So what they do is they take all the stuff from the capsule, they dump it on the table, and they look at the engineers and say, hey, you guys need to figure out how to do this. We're going to give all this to you. You guys do it. And I think that would be effective for Major League Baseball. Look, you guys can decide what we need to do, but we want to get to whatever the numbers, 240, 245 in terms of time of game. We'll do what you guys want to do. We're going to dump this on the table. You tell us what works. You tell us what doesn't work, and we'll make it happen. You like it?
You asking Josh or me?
You, Jason.
Yeah, I do think that specific goals would be really helpful, would be a really good idea, because some of these things conflict. And, I've written a lot about this, Buster, myself through the last few years. And here's one of the really interesting factors at work. And I'm sure you've noticed this. The people who have bought tickets, who are at the games, for the most part, they're not in a hurry to leave. Like, at a certain point, they got to go to work or go to school or whatever, but they like hanging out. It's like going to the sports bar. It's the world's greatest sports bar or whatever. But the people watching at home, the clicker crowd, has a completely different perspective, right? They want things to move along. You've got this tug-of-war between those two forces. Who are you trying to appease? Who are you trying to draw into the game? I'd like to know that. I think that's a really difficult question to answer.
Yep, and we know that there'll be a lot of discussions between Major League Baseball and the Players Association in the months ahead, because this is going to be a big conversation going into next offseason.
Wow.
Jason, before we go, we got about 2 minutes left, and I want to just touch on Tim Tebow. He took batting practice for the first time with the Mets on Monday and joining their spring training. It certainly got a lot of headlines. It's getting a lot of attention. I do think as this plays out that it's important to keep all this in context, and I think back to the Michael Jordan experience that we had when he left the Chicago Bulls for a while to play professional baseball. I think there are a lot of parallels there. First off, the physical parts of Michael Jordan that were so important for him as a basketball player really worked against him as a baseball player. Those long arms that he had that made him a great player, great defender. When he hit, it was a real problem. And I had one evaluator say about Tim Tebow to me, look, he's too big. He's never going to be able to hit really good professional pitching until he drops down. They love his work ethic. You love having him around their players. There's nothing wrong with that. But I also think it's important as he goes through these batting practices that we all remember, look, he's a million miles away from being a major league player. Yeah, you hope that he does. Maybe he's the outlier and it translates, but he's not close to being a big league player. I thought it was important when we talked about Michael Jordan in the early 90s, and I think it's important to remember that as we talk about Tebow now. What do you think?
Yeah, no doubt. Now, Buster, I actually, covered a little bit of the Michael Jordan saga back when he tried to play baseball, and I would describe myself as being intensely curious about it. Right? Very curious to see it. And I think that describes a lot of people now with Tim Tebow, and it describes some of the the way we're addicted to even watching him take BP, because we want to see what kind of skills does this guy have. But what he does in BP has so little to do with what he has to accomplish in order to become a real baseball player, a successful player, a successful hitter. All of those challenges lie ahead, and he's got to figure them out in the anonymity of the minor leagues. I don't know if it's possible for him to ever experience the anonymity of the minor leagues. Jordan was able to do it to a limited extent. That's probably the best this guy can hope for. But I wish him luck. I'm curious, but I feel for him, man. I do.
Yeah, Michael Jordan was the greatest athlete in the world, and he didn't come close to being a major league caliber hitter. And that's the challenge of Tim Tebow as he moves forward. Jason, thanks for doing this. Great piece. Again, I would encourage everyone to read Jason's piece on politics and baseball at ESPN.com.
Buster, thanks, man. And next week we can go back to talking about baseball and baseball. Look forward to that.
We'll be back in 1 minute with Astros ace Dallas Keuchel. But first, buying tickets to sports and concerts can be way too complicated, but there is a better, simpler way to buy with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to live events. With SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. There's nothing quite like seeing your favorite team or musician in person, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for a great value. And I can attest to this firsthand, Josh. You know what I use SeatGeek for? I got tickets for my daughter for her birthday to Hamilton.
Oh, wow.
For her birthday last year.
That's a nice get, Buster. That's a really nice get.
Yep. And she was very fired up. It was very simple, and I'm going to be on her good list, I think, for the rest of her life because I got her those tickets.
At least for the next few months.
Right, exactly. SeatGeek is designed to make your ticket buying experience easier than ever. SeatGeek saves you time and money by searching multiple ticket sites to compare prices and find amazing deals. And to get you the most bang for your buck, SeatGeek grades every ticket based on value to help you immediately identify the best seats that fit your budget. Plus, every purchase is fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets on SeatGeek with confidence. Make SeatGeek your go-to app for finding the best deals on every type of ticket, from sports to concerts to comedy and, yes, theater. Best of all, my listeners get a $20 rebate off their first SeatGeek purchase. To get your $20 rebate on tickets, download the SeatGeek app. Go to the Settings tab and click Add a Promo Code. Enter promo code BBTN, and SeatGeek will send you $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase. Download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code BBTN today. We've been doing these rapid-fire interviews with players all through spring training. The other day, I got a chance to sit down with former Cy Young Award winner Dallas Keuchel. Give a listen. Your favorite movie?
Ooh, I was just talking about this the other day. Favorite movie has to be Shawshank Redemption.
Celebrity crush?
Jessica Alba.
Walk-up song?
I Am by Rock Mafia featuring White Clock John.
Favorite player growing up?
Favorite pitcher was John Smoltz. Favorite player was Griffey.
If you weren't a baseball player, you would be?
A shoe designer.
Come on. Really?
Yes. Athletic wear. Somewhere in Nike now Nike since I'm with them, but one of the athletic lines.
That's pretty cool. Number of tattoos, and what's your favorite tattoo?
Number of tattoos is growing, so my mom's probably not going to like that. 5. Favorite tattoo is my grandma's name in Japanese. She was by far the most influential person in my life outside of my parents, just because she had a few strokes back when I was growing up, so she actually came to live with us, and even though she wasn't the same, she taught me a lot of stuff growing up, how to be a man and enjoy life.
Favorite emoji, and can you imitate it for us?
There's a new one. It's the drooling emoji. And it's got, I can't do the whole drool because I don't want to do that with my beard, but it's just like a...
What's it like to pitch to Mike Trout?
It's fun. Competition. I love the competition. It doesn't matter who it is, but Mike Trout's a special player. Playing in the AL West, we get to face him quite a few times. So it's something that after the at-bat's done or he gets a hit or I strike him out or get him out, I always look back because he's looking at me, and we always pop a little smirk until next time.
Who's the best player at your position, starting pitcher?
Ooh, that's a good one. I mean, the obvious one is Kershaw, but I feel like he's just on a different planet. He's by far the most talented, but yet all I've heard is he's a very hard worker as well. But right-handed, I would probably say Kluber. I'm a big fan of Kluber's as well.
Yeah, Kershaw's a beast.
Yes.
Dude, he works. What did you learn on and off the field playing Little League Baseball?
the importance of never giving up. I saw plenty of guys around me more talented than me. Maybe not so much, younger, just because you don't really realize that. But once you get towards like 10, 12, kind of almost in high school, you see a lot of talented guys that you never hear about anymore. And for some reason or another, injuries, giving up, I just never gave up. So that was something I like to tell some of the kids in my position now that are coming up to high school, is that persistence pays off. It's never giving up. If you truly enjoy it and you love it, then just keep at it until you literally can't do it anymore.
You were quoted as telling reporters that you stunk last year. Explain that.
Well, I set high standards for myself. I've been on both sides of the spectrum. I debuted and did all right, then wasn't very good for about a year. Then I figured some stuff out. But my standards is at the top. I set my sights high, and I didn't live up to them. People can say about the shoulder or whatever, but if I'm taking the ball, whether or not I'm 75% or 100%, I'm fully expecting myself to go out there and deliver a win or a quality start for the guys.
What are your first impressions of Brian McCann?
A pro. And he's actually a lot more funny than I thought he was. I thought he was kind of this straight-laced professional guy. But he's really funny. He's popped a lot of jokes, but he cares. And immediately from the first conversation I had with him to now, he wants to play baseball and he wants to get to know the guys. And that's special, because when you get 25 guys like that, that's when special things happen.
You guys made the playoffs in 2015. You didn't last year. What's the difference going to be this year, do you believe?
Pitching. In 2015, you look back, a lot of guys did a lot of good things, and last year it wasn't the same. We're going to score a lot of runs. I mean, there's no doubt about that, but it's the pitching side that always gets it done, and it wins championships. I saw it last year with the Cubs, the Indians. I mean, Kluber pretty much gave them a very good shot at winning the World Series, but we just weren't very good last year from top to bottom, myself included. We just didn't get the job done. So a lot of us are healthy. A lot of us are setting the bar high and talking about getting back to the playoffs. So it'll be no stranger, but if we're in the playoffs, it's going to be, a lot of it has to do with the pitching.
Who's got a better beard, you or David Ross?
Oh, see, the salt and pepper look really has come on the scene. So he's got the salt right here, but he's also got some of the darkerness, and then it's obviously mixed in the body. But I mean, he's got a couple of World Series, so I'm going to say Rossi, Grandpa Rossi.
You're the only one so far. Thanks, Dal.
Yeah.
Todd Radom is the chief executive of our Uniform and Logo Quiz. He is a graphic artist who designs uniform and logos. You can see his work on ball fields all across America or at his website, toddradom.com. Todd, welcome back. How are you doing, sir?
Buster, it must be springtime. The snow has melted. There's a little warmth in the air. I am doing well, and it's so good to be back here with you guys.
Yeah, it's great to talk with you, and I can't wait to get to this year's trouncing. But before we do that, tell us what you've been working on.
I have been happily buried these past few months. Some baseball stuff, certainly, which I'll talk about in the coming weeks. But what I've really been busy with is developing the look of Ice Cube's new 3-on-3 basketball league, which is called the Big Three. And we are just absolutely racing the wire in a good way. We've got 4 teams that have been released to this point. So it's logos, uniforms, really starting something from scratch and working with Cube each and every day, which has really been a great thing.
How about that, dropping Cube on us, Josh? I mean, he's going right to the shorthand with us.
you're really close, and really have that hood pass, quote unquote. Once you can just call him Cube and drop the ice.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're talking.
And Todd, you're such a nice person. You're very easygoing, and you can get along with just about anybody, I think. But how in the heck did you get hooked up in that situation?
His longtime representatives out west contacted me, I think like back in September or October, as they were starting this thing. And, it was just like this absolute, found me somewhere out on the internet. Somewhere in that all of that gunk, they found me, and it's been a great partnership. He really understands logo. He's a logo geek like we are, seriously, and really has a great sense of design, and just been a joy to work with. So it's one of these situations that when you've got a lot of work to do with high stakes in a compressed amount of time, you want to be in the trenches with somebody that you enjoy working with and who gets it, and it's been a pretty linear process. So it's exciting, and I think it's going to be, I think they've got a real shot at success. I think it's going to be a great, very entertaining venture.
Todd now has that West Side connection, and I'm sure I'm the only one who gets that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, you are.
And I'm such an East Coast guy, so,
That's right.
I'm nationwide now.
Yes.
All right. Let's get to the trouncing. Let's get to the wipeout. Of course, in the first year of the uniform logo quiz, I think I tanked. I was rebuilding for future seasons. I lost to Josh in the first season. Last year, I ran away with it because all the talent manifested itself. I say that kiddingly. And according to our rules, last year, Josh, because he won in 2015, he had to answer each of these questions before I did. That's a significant advantage. And this year, Josh, who needs this advantage, will have it. I will answer all the questions first this year. And Todd, without further ado, what do we have for today?
All right. Well, we really have to begin this new season where the last season left off. When the Chicago Cubs won the 2016 World Series in a Game 7 for the ages, they wore two different sleeve patches on their jerseys. One depicted the World Series logo. What was the other one? Was it A, their Walking Bear logo, B, a logo commemorating Wrigley Field, C, the logo of the National League, or D, the image of a billy goat, wide open, looking slightly nervous? Bear logo, Wrigley Field, National League logo, or a nervous billy goat as the rain started?
Wow. Boy, oh boy. Gee whiz. Okay. I'm going to go with C, the National League logo.
Yep. I was really looking forward to getting that 1-0 lead because I've been training all winter like Rocky in Rocky 4. But Buster is right, and as am I when I say that it is C, the National League logo.
Well, it's not an exciting result, but you're both correct.
Yeah.
And, it's nice to be batting 1,000 right out of the box.
Nice. I love that. I mean, it's the first time either of us have been in the plus side of this ledger, I'm sure, throughout this entire contest.
Yeah, we're both over 500 for the first time in 2 years.
Yeah, you're gonna, it's like somebody who now, if you're still batting 400 after the All-Star break, then we got something to talk about. But congratulations, gentlemen, you're off to a stellar beginning to the new season.
Oh man,
Excellent.
Thank you, Todd.
Well, Todd, thank you for this, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, boys. Good luck.
Thanks.
John Capalela is the general manager of the Atlanta Braves. And Copy, you are down in Florida, but there's going to be so much focus for the Braves this year on your new ballpark, SunTrust Park. And I'm curious about what you've heard and what you've learned about the ballpark and how it's going to play. I know, I've heard stories about teams as they get ready to open up a ballpark. They'll actually, I think the Twins brought in Joe Mauer and Justin Morneau to take batting practice in their park during the offseason, just to get a feel for whether it would favor hitters or whether it would favor pitchers. What are you hearing about your place, and what are you looking forward to?
Well, first, it's going to be a real game changer for us. I mean, this is a state-of-the-art, beautiful park. I mean, great props to our guys that have been involved with it, from Mike Plan, Derek Schiller, John Sherholz, John Hart, Terry McGurk, our whole group, have really put blood, sweat, tears into it. And it's going to be something special. And basically when you get out of the park, there's something that we call Battery Atlanta, which is a mixed-use facility that is going to be unparalleled. You're going to have, probably 7 or 8 great restaurants. You're going to have, spots where you can shop. You're going to have a bowling alley, movie theater, a live concert hall. It's going to be something really special. And for us, the fact that we draw from 9 states is, it's something where you can come down on a Friday and there's something there for the whole family. So we're very excited about that. As far as for the way it's going to play, we feel like it's going to play a lot like Turner Field. That's kind of the way that we had set up. It's going to be a fair park. I think if you look at a lot of the park factors in the Bill James Handbook, we're, anywhere from 98 to 101 each year, which is right in that middle range. So it's a little bit shorter right field porch, a little bit shorter left center porch. That should all help Freddie Freeman. But other than that, it should be a pretty fair park.
Has anyone actually taken batting practice in the park?
Not really. We're kind of trying to get it all done on time, which I know we will, and we are ahead of schedule. It's just something where it's coming down to the wire. Like, we've had guys do it on dirt back in August. We had a great tour by Terry, and he kind of showed our whole team around basically, and it was really cool. And there they just kind of hit balls out from there. But I mean, there wasn't any grass laid, there wasn't anything going on to where they could do that formal batting practice. We are playing New York Yankees on March 31st. That'll probably be the first time any of our guys get a chance to hit in that ballpark.
Any sense of the wind? It's interesting. I asked that because last year I was having conversations with the Cubs players about that ballpark and how it was affected by the addition, that massive scoreboard that's over left center field. And some of the guys who've been with the Cubs for a while said it changed a lot. Where, in the past, most days it felt like more of a hitter's park. But last year, I think Joe Madden said there were only like 10 or 11 days where the prevailing winds were actually going out to the outfield. And I know the players really feel like that the scoreboard changed things. Is there any sense, based on the studies that were done about how the winds will play in the park?
Yeah, I mean, there is a little bit, but kind of like what you talked about with that scoreboard, it's a situation where up until you're in it and you see how it plays, you won't really know. We can kind of guess and do all these different studies, but we won't know until we're in there playing in it.
I'm curious about your conversations with players on the team. Do you get any questions from those guys? Is this, as you guys are going through the plans, you mentioned that maybe it could be an advantage for someone like a Freddie Freeman.
Yeah, I mean, I think Freddie Freeman could hit in any park in any planet, basically. I mean, he'd be fine. But, I mean, it will, it should help him just kind of based upon his spray chart. But, it's something where I think our guys, we've got such a positive vibe going around here now, the way we finished last year, 20-10. I think they just want to get the year started. I mean, they'll just kind of see, they'll just see how it plays once we're in there. But it's hard to tell right now because we're still trying to get things finished off in the park.
Yeah, and I thought Freddie Freeman really took a big jump starting last June to the end of the year when we did off-season positional rankings. We had Freddie Freeman ranked first among first basemen. I had a conversation with him at the end of June in which he was telling me that he just got to a point in his mid-20s where he was like, you know what, I just got to stop swinging at pitches out of the zone. Do you think that was at the heart of what happened with Freddie down the stretch?
Yes, and Freddie should get all the credit in the world, but Freddie would also be the first one to say that for us, getting Matt Kemp, putting somebody in there who could hit behind him in the lineup was a big factor. I can still think back to the day of that trade. Freddie Freeman had the biggest smile I'd seen on his face in years. It was something where we had, I think 10 or 12 guys hitting cleanup for us over the past 4 years, and it's guys that shouldn't have hit, a cleanup playing Little League. I mean, it's guys that were not number 4 hitters, but we had chosen to put our assets into young players. And we had known it would be a tough 2 years, but that we were doing what's best for the Braves franchise and what's best for the Braves fans. And when we had a chance to get Matt Kemp in the trade that we got him in, We thought it would help the Braves. We thought it would help Freddie Freeman. And you know what? Matt should get all the credit in the world. This guy had a great year, 35 homers, 39 doubles, 108 runs batted in. And, you know, he has come into camp. He dropped about 25, 30 pounds. He looks great. He's a hard worker. He's had a great attitude. And this guy has been such a positive force for us.
Yeah, I saw that when he came in because I was hearing from scouts in the middle of last year before he was traded. You guys were there going, boy, he's gotten heavier. And so it's a good sign that he's cutting down now. Tell me about what you're seeing in your pitching staff. You know, you got some veterans around Julio Teheran who had a strong first outing in spring training the other day. What are you seeing in terms of those guys in the mix with a lot of the young pitchers that you have?
Well, part of what's fun is we've got 5 guys that do it somewhat differently. You know, you've got Julio's a good power righty. If we were to follow him up with Bartolo Colon, he's a guy that throws 90% fastballs and locates, hits the corners. Then you've got a lefty, Jaime Garcia. Then you've got R.A. Dickey, who, you know, on the knuckleball. And then you've got right now Mike Fultonevich. It could be Matt Whistler. It could be Aaron Blair. It could be John Danks. But, you know, just as these guys follow themselves, not like 5 of the same guys. They all do things a little bit different. And we feel like they will gel. You know, the biggest thing for us is we need to save our bullpen. I mean, we ran a list of stars through it last year and guys that were out of the game by the second or the third inning, and it just absolutely will run through your whole bullpen. We've got to make 2 or 3 roster moves each night. It's just a tough situation, and we feel like we got innings. We feel like from the 3 guys we brought in that we can get 550, 600 innings, and that's a big factor for us.
Copy. Thanks for doing this. I'll see you down in Florida.
Okay, great. All right, Buster, thanks. I'll see you.
Bleacher tweets.
Buster, Christopher Shields gets us started today. He's at Christy_Shields, and Christy would like to know, between the Cardinals and Pirates, which of those 2 teams can mount the best challenge against the Cubs for the National League Central?
First off, I don't think anyone's going to challenge the Cubs, but I'll go with the question a little bit. Who's the bigger threat? I think the team with a higher ceiling among those 2 clubs, the Pirates. I just think between their pitching and their everyday lineup, they potentially could be better. But I also say this, if they get off to any kind of a slow start, if they're not really that much in the race for the postseason in late June, early July, I think they'll sell. So it's an interesting, and you know the Cardinals will never be midseason sellers, or on the other hand, the Pirates probably would be looking for an opportunity to market Andrew McCutchen.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm surprised you answered that one, Buster. I really expected you to go C, none of the above. But you didn't. Next one from Jeremy May at JermMay5. Sticking in the NL Central, he'd like to know, with Schwarber back, do you think KB plays significantly less outfield this year, or do you think you could still see 15 to 20 starts out there?
Yeah, I think that's about the right number. I do think you'll probably be at being a utility role less and less. It's interesting, but when I did one of those rapid-fire interviews with players, and I can't remember which guy it was. I think it might have been Manny Machado, but when I asked him about who's the best player at his position, he didn't mention Chris Bryant, and he looked at me and said, well, that's because I kind of see him as a utility guy because he moves around. But you know what? As he gets older, you wonder if that's going to happen less and less, because I know, generally speaking, established players like to be in the same spot day in and day out.
You mentioned those rapid-fire interviews, Buster, and Kurt Everard at Aussie Cards Fan has been listening to them, and I'm sure you just heard Dallas Keuchel also say that Clayton Kershaw is one of the best pitchers at his position, if not the best, and Kurt would like to know, why is someone with as terrible a postseason record as Kershaw always called the best pitcher, especially amongst his peers?
I think because players care a lot more about large sample size than small sample size. You know, for a lot of fans, it's you got to win in the postseason. It's got to be in October. And Kershaw's record's certainly not great, but if you actually look at how he's pitched during those games, it's better than what the numbers would indicate. But the reason why the players are answering that way, Kershaw has 265 regular season appearances in his career, just 18 in the postseason. Those 265, he's arguably the greatest pitcher of all time.
Sticking with those rapid-fire interviews, Jeff Sue at JH City says, Buster, a lot of these players are saying they don't know what they'd do if they didn't play baseball. That's a little weird. What would you do if you didn't cover baseball?
It's interesting because I agree. I've been surprised that a lot of the players have looked at me blankly when I've asked that question. Go, wow, geez, I don't know. I wouldn't think about that. And then you put yourself in their position. Probably from the time they were 6 years old, they've been told how great they are at baseball. They've dominated idiots like me, right?
Yeah.
Nerds in Little League and all the way up, and they probably began to hear from some people that, yeah, you probably could play Major League Baseball at some point, and that's how they thought of themselves. For me, I've already had a second career. I was the fastest bagel baker in 3 states.
That's quite a distinction, Buster. Finally, we got this one from Mitchell at Tigers of Detroit. He says, is there still even a Harper versus Trout debate, or is it now widely understood that Trout's just the better player?
Yes. Trout is going to compete before the end of his career, probably in the next few years, with Willie Mays, with Babe Ruth in the competition, with Barry Bonds, the competition for the greatest player of all time, not just this era.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a knock on Bryce Harper. Yeah, it's just being complimentary of Trout, and deservedly so. Keep those questions coming. Use the hashtag BleacherTweets.
Well, that's it for today. My thanks to Dallas Keuchel, to John Capalela, to Jason Stark, to Josh Macri, who produces this podcast every day, and to our good friend Todd Radom. Good to have him back. Thanks for listening, everybody, and have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Baseball Tonight podcast. If you're playing fantasy baseball, don't forget to listen to the Fantasy Focus podcast. Check out all podcasts at ESPN.com/PodCenter. Baseball Tonight, the podcast.